Friends, I'm Dan Brewster. I work for you in the Senate of the United States. And on May the 19th, I will be running for the presidency of the United States. Not for myself, but for the Democratic Party and for a man that I have tremendous respect for, Lyndon Johnson. Today, I welcome to Maryland a great American, an old friend, a man I sit next to in the Senate. His name is Ted Kennedy. Ted's family has probably made as great a contribution to America as any family in our history. Ted, we're very happy to have you in Maryland. Thanks for coming over. We're glad to see you, and I'd like you to talk to our Maryland friends.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Brewster. I appreciate this opportunity to speak to the people of Maryland, and I would like to thank all of you who are watching for the many messages of sympathy you have sent since last November to Mrs. Kennedy and her children, and for the prayers you have offered in their behalf. President Kennedy had a warm feeling for Maryland. He visited here many times. You gave him wonderful support, which he appreciated very much. I think he would have wanted one of us to speak up about this presidential primary. Maryland has a proud history. Your tradition is of moderation and restraint, which makes possible the pleasant living you enjoy. On the issue of race and region, your state has often been the bridge between the North and the South. You have tried to help the flow of reason and hold back the flow of hatred between the sections. It is a difficult role, but an honorable one. Marylanders have performed it with distinction. This is the state of John Carroll, Cardinal Gibbons, of Albert Ritchie, of the Act of Religious Tolerance, signed 325 years ago. This is the state where Protestants and Catholics, immigrants and natives, whites and Negroes have learned to live together, not always in agreement, but certainly always in peace. This month, in this Democratic primary, Maryland must again help the nation. The issue is the same. On the one hand, we have President Johnson, the leader of the Democratic Party, a man whose special genius is, as Maryland's is, that of bringing people together so that they can live in harmony. President Johnson represents this state's tradition of moderation. He has asked his good friend, Senator Brewster, to stand in for him in this primary. Senator Brewster's opponent has come into your state to run against the leader of the Democratic Party. He does this because he represents a different tradition. I realize there are many of you who have been disturbed in recent months by the developments in the field of civil rights. You may be thinking of voting for Senator Brewster's opponent as a way of showing that concern. I would ask you to stop and think of what your vote will do and what it will not do. Such a vote will not affect passage of the Civil Rights Bill in Congress. Every congressman from Maryland, Democrat and Republican, has already voted for that bill. Both your senators are for it. What will be the result of such a vote? It'll be to tell the nation that Maryland has abandoned her historic role, has turned away from moderation, and started down a different road. I would like you very frankly to look at where that road leads. I cannot think any of you would like to have a Maryland in which churches are bombed, in which children are killed, in which an agency of the government spies on citizens. This is not states' rights. This is not local control. I do not think you would want to vote for leadership which has been known to say that Polish and Italian Americans are not as good as other Americans. I do not think that those of you whose background is Southern would want to vote for a man whose campaign in this primary is not supported by any senator or governor in any of the Southern states. He stands in a corner by himself, and his program is not what you want for America. Each of you enrolled in the Democratic Party have an important decision to make on May 19th. I hope all Maryland Democrats who voted for my brother in 1960 will vote for Senator Brewster in this primary. The lesson should be that we should not hate but love one another, as the Bible preaches. That we should cast our vote and use our powers to create not conditions of oppression that lead to violence, but a climate of freedom that leads to peace. It is in that spirit and that of your own great tradition that I hope the Democrats of Maryland will vote on May 19th for Senator Brewster.
Ted, thank you very much. Let me bring you this report. I know the Democrats of Maryland, and I believe all Marylanders, will support the President of the United States as they supported your brother. We are very proud of the traditions of our state. We will not turn our votes over to a man that stands for injustice, intolerance, bias, bigotry, and everything that you and I think is wrong. Let me ask you this question. How would a man from Alabama has any serious challenge to the principles of the President of the United States and for all that you and I believe in?
Well, very definitely not in the sense of presenting any really constructive opposition to President Johnson. He has been unsuccessful and repudiated by the voters of Wisconsin, and again most recently by the voters of Indiana. But I think this gets to the fundamental fact which is before the people of Maryland, Senator, and that's to why exactly are you running? Why should you be standing in for President Johnson?
It's very simple, Ted. Under Maryland law, our Democratic delegation to Atlantic City would be obligated to stand on the floor of the convention and nominate and vote for this man from Alabama unless somebody opposed him. I'm happy to oppose him. It's the only responsible action that an official of the party can take in our state. We're going to win. There's no question about this. The only question is the margin of our victory. How would a man like this do in Massachusetts?
Well, I don't believe that he would be supported by the reasonable and moderate elements, those who believe in the dignity and the respect of the individual, or even those that believe in states' rights, because with states' rights go state responsibilities. And I think, as I mentioned in my few comments earlier, I think that this is one of the areas where Governor, your opponent, has been lacking. But people, I think, throughout the country are interested in the fact that not only are you presenting a very clear and definite alternative to your opponent in this sense, but you're also standing for the kind of programs which have been the Kennedy-Johnson programs as well in the state. Isn't that correct, Dan?
It certainly is, and things are going well for us in Maryland. The churches, the Catholic, the Jewish, the Protestant, have all marched shoulder to shoulder down the street and supporting the cause of reason and justice, not politics, but just justice for all Americans. This is going very well. Organized labor has been, without exception, 100% in our corner.
Could I ask a question?
Go ahead, Senator.
Have you found that there's been any misrepresentation of the various titles which today or this evening being debated in the Senate to try and confuse and distort what is being debated by your opponent?
We have heard the most outrageous lies, Ted, you've ever heard. Our opponent or his supporters have come into Maryland and said the Civil Rights Bill interferes with unions, interferes with homes, interferes with employment. Nothing could be further from the truth. What this bill does, as you well know, it says an American citizen, regardless of your color or your religion, has the right to vote, has the right to go to school in your own community. When you're a traveler on the roads, you can stop in a place that does business for the public and get something to eat when you're hungry. You can go to the motel and find a place to sleep with your children and your wife.
In other words,
it's a very reasonable proposition.
I think that this is what makes it so compelling and appealing to the people of my state. that each one of the titles addresses itself to one of the grievances which exist in the country today, but that it is a moderate and reasonable approach. Those that do believe in these basic rights can support this. And I think one of the great disservices that your opponent performs, not only in this state, and that's why the people of Massachusetts are so appreciative of the fact that you would carry this standard, because you're not just carrying it for the people of Maryland, but you're carrying it for the people of my own state of Massachusetts and the people throughout the country who believe and share as your ideals and your concepts of the Kennedy-Johnson program, but also your great respect for the individual. And the fact that it's being distorted, and the fact that there are being lies and statements made which are not based upon any truth, must make it difficult for you and put an additional burden upon you and upon your volunteers who have been working so endlessly for all of us in this cause.
Ted, it's difficult, but we know that justice and right is in our corner. We stand behind the program of President Kennedy, President Johnson, and the cause of justice. There can be no question as to the outcome, but we should not narrow the field just to an argument over this one issue. This is the entire program of the Democratic Party. Everything that you believe in, that I believe in, that is on trial. The prestige of the president, the programs of your brother that you and I supported. There are so many of them. Responsible international participation, the nuclear test ban treaty, the war on poverty, our slum clearance, our unemployment problems, our trade negotiations. We're trying to do a decent job. We do not need this interloper in our state. I'm sure you don't want him in yours.
Well, in other words, the people that are going to go to the polls in Maryland on May 19th to cast their vote for you are really, in effect, casting their vote for President Johnson, are casting a vote as well for the kinds of programs that President Johnson believes in, that President Kennedy has supported. And that's why I was so delighted to come at your invitation, Senator Brewster, and join with you and so many of the friends out there that have been so wonderful to all the members of our family and to the President in supporting him, because I know on May 19th that they're going to give that support to you.
Well, Ted, welcome to Maryland. Come back and see us more often. I know that we're on the right track. I know the Democratic Party in Maryland will show the country and show the world that we will not support this advocate of intolerance, of bigotry, of bias, and all the things that we do not believe in. We Marylanders, we believe in decency. We want a good place for our kids to go to school. We want a chance to get a job. We want a chance to live a decent life. We want a chance to vote for the people, regardless of party, that will do the best job for their community, for our state, and for the United States. So, Ted, thank you very, very much. I'm glad to have you here in Maryland. Come back and see us more often, and my best to Joan.
Thank you very much.
Support President Johnson. Vote for Brewster on the Democratic primary May 19th. This announcement, Authority Herbert R. O'Connor, Treasurer of the Brewster Campaign Committee.